Incredible bond. Blind veteran encounters retired police dog. What happens next is touching. And Jack sat on the worn wooden bench outside the animal shelter, the crisp Ohio air biting at his cheeks. He listened to the cacophony of barking dogs, a symphony of hope and desperation. But even their exuberance couldn't cut through the thick fog of isolation that had enveloped him since returning from the service. And now, as a blind man, he felt more disconnected than ever, a shadow of the soldier he once was. This place had become his refuge. Volunteering gave him purpose, but every moment was a reminder of what he had lost. Today, he had the chance to meet Rex, a retired police dog who was doubly wounded, once in service, and the second time by neglect. His heart ached for the dog, a mirror reflecting his struggles, each battle echoing in haunted silence. And yet, doubt crept into Jack's thoughts. Could he connect with a creature so battered by the world as he was? A soldier without sight, a dog without a leg. They were both standing on the edge of life, wondering how to leap into something new. As Jack cautiously approached Rex for the first time, he could hear the soft whimpering of the dog, a desperate plea for understanding. He extended a trembling hand, fingertips brushing against Rex's fur, and a warmth ignited in his chest. Did the dog feel it too? A connection? But uncertainty clawed at him, the fear of being cast aside again whispering cruelly in his ear. Would he truly be able to handle the responsibility of healing another being when he was barely holding himself together? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack and Rex thrived on their shared progress. They trained in the shelter yard, a heartbeat synced to the rhythm of unspoken communication. Jack learned to read Rex's movements, trusting the dog's instincts and guidance. But just when things felt like they were settling into a new routine, the cracks in their fragile bubble began to deepen. Whispers of Rex's past service caught the attention of a powerful local organization, eager to reclaim the dog not for companionship, but for a community program that promised fame and prestige. Jack's stomach twisted at the thought. This was the first true bond he had felt since returning home, yet they wanted to wrench it away for a greater good. The conflicting emotions raged inside him, desperation clawing at his heart. How could they value accolades over the loyalty of a bond he fought tooth and nail to build? Jack's mind raced. He envisioned life without Rex, the hole it would leave, the silence that would smother him once more. Would he send Rex back to a world that thrived on recognition? The thought festered, igniting a determination he feared was waning. Did he have strength left to confront this machine? The weight of the dilemma pressed down on him, as heavy as the medals on his old uniform, echoes of a soldier who had seen too much and felt too little. With a breath that felt like lead in his lungs, Jack steeled himself. He had fought for honor and loyalty before, but this battle felt different. The stakes were higher now. An emotional chasm opened beneath him, and it was threatening to swallow everything he had rebuilt. The looming confrontation with the organization drew near, even as Jack clung to the hope that loyalty would triumph over the clamor for recognition. But as he faced uncertainty, with the heart of their bond hanging in the balance, Jack knew he stood on the brink of a decision that could redefine everything. Jack could hardly breathe as he walked away from the shelter, his mind racing with the implications of the organization's interest in Rex. Internally, he battled the demons of doubt that whispered he was unworthy, a soldier without sight, a man without direction. Yet amidst the turmoil, a flicker of resolve ignited within him. If he had fought for so much less in the past, surely he could muster the strength to fight for this dog, their bond forged in shared adversity. Just beyond the shelter's gates he hesitated, a storm of questions swirling in his mind. How could he articulate his feelings to those in authority? The weight of the decision pressed down on him, and he felt the swell of emotional resistance threaten to drown him in despair. He needed to figure out a plan, a way to present his case, one that humanized both him and Rex. He began making notes in his mind, pulling from the memories of his service. In those days, forging connections was less about words and more about shared experience. Rex had endured both loss and battles that had paralleled his own, a fierce soldier in a different kind of fight. But could he convey this to the organization? They were not just pondering organizational prestige. Their interest circled around tangible results, statistics, applause. But Jack instinctively knew that Rex deserved more than a mere platform for acclaim. That night, Jack sat in his small apartment, the darkness closing in around him. He felt a comforting weight against his leg. Rex had taken to leaning against him as he worked through paperwork, serving as an anchor. The dog's presence reminded him of his own struggles. Both had faced abandonment, loss, and the haunting specters of their pasts. "What do you think, buddy?" Jack murmured to Rex, who responded with a gentle nuzzle against his hand. A quiet understanding passed between them, an acknowledgement of the fight ahead. The next day, Jack returned to the shelter armed with determination. He approached the head of the organization, a woman with an air of authority that made his heart race. Her brow furrowed as she discussed plans for Rex's future, emphasizing the program's need for success stories. Listening intently, Jack felt tension coil in the pit of his stomach. The path was littered with obstacles, and another chance at recognition would come at the expense of the connection he fought for. "Respectfully, I'd like to present an alternative," he interrupted, his voice steady but ringing with urgency. "Rex isn't just a dog with a past worth sharing. He's a living embodiment of what resilience looks like. We can show that in his story, one that's not based around accolades but about understanding, healing, and companionship." The room fell silent. He could feel every gaze upon him, a weighty expectation hanging in the air. Jack continued, tapping into his military experience to frame his perspective. His time in combat had taught him the value of teamwork, the importance of trust, and an unwavering loyalty that transcended physical challenges. "What we both need," he asserted, "is a chance at redemption, not just for Rex, but for veterans like myself, who need to find their way again. Let us show the world that even in brokenness, there's strength. We can create a narrative that reshapes perceptions." As he spoke, Jack felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in years. This was not merely a plea for Rex's freedom, it was a statement of purpose. His own journey mirrored in the eyes of a dog that had faced abandonment. With the air electric around him, Jack awaited her response, every heartbeat echoing the swirling tide of hope and trepidation. She leaned back, seemingly considering his words, the silence resonating deep within him. Would she see their bond? Would she recognize the power of their shared journey? Before he could settle the turbulence building in his chest, she opened her mouth to speak, the words teetering on the edge of possibility, ready to either solidify their bond or shatter their dreams apart. Jack's heart thundered, the silence stretching painfully as he awaited the verdict that could either cement their future or unravel the fragile thread of hope he had painstakingly woven. He could sense the room's tension, the collective breath of anticipation hanging in the air like stale smoke. Every second felt like a small eternity, each tick of the clock amplifying his uncertainty. "Your passion is commendable, Jack," the woman finally began, her tone neither warm nor dismissive. "However, our resources are finite. Success stories will bring publicity, which translates to funding and appearances. We can't prioritize emotional narratives over measurable outcomes." Her words sliced through him, an immediate cold wave of despair washing over his carefully constructed resolve. How could she disregard their connection so easily? Rex, trembling at his side, seemed to sense Jack's deepening frustration, nuzzling closer in a gesture of unwavering support. The dog's connection grounded him, anchoring him against the tide of his emotions. Yet Jack's mind raced. Was he merely a relic of a bygone era, one who fought for honor and connections that now felt irrelevant? The organization's disposition toward metrics smothered the very essence of what he hoped to convey. They were not just statistics, they were embodiments of struggles and redemption. But was he capable of articulating that without becoming entrenched in bitterness? "Do you think those stories hold real weight?" He pressed quietly, skillfully masking his frustration behind an earnest facade. "I know numbers can be impressive, but those statistics could easily slip away in a moment. Please consider the change that authentic connections could inspire in lives, including veterans like myself. I've waited a long time to find purpose. Rex helped me confront a darkness I thought would never lift. As he spoke, Jack's heart drummed steadily, fueling a fiercer resolve. Perhaps if he shared the risks he had taken and the vulnerabilities he faced, she might reconsider the emotional strength of their partnership. He allowed memories of his service to flood back, moments of shared suffering and triumph. The awareness of relying on men by his side, feeling the weight of their lives pressing against his own, illuminated the importance of trust. What he needed was a symphony of vulnerability that resonated with those who heard it. Rex is more than a symbol of resilience. He's a partner, just like my comrades were, Jack continued, leaning forward slightly. I want to show that vulnerability isn't weakness, but strength. Many veterans are struggling, just like Rex and I have been. If we can speak for them, then we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're advocating for an entire community that feels unheard. As he finished, the intensity of his words lingered in the air, closing the distance between his desire to connect and the organization's need for impactful outcomes. Jack could feel the weight of the room shift, collective breaths held in suspense. He observed the woman's brow furrowing, eyes reflecting a flicker of contemplation. This was his second chance, and it could slip by if he didn't grasp it firmly. Let's discuss a plan, she finally said. One that incorporates your vision but also aligns with our initiatives. Jack's breath caught in his throat, the thump of his heart echoing louder than before. Would they create something meaningful together? Could they prove the worth of connection over mere metrics? Just as he began to form a response, a sharp bark from Rex broke through the tension, interrupting his thoughts as though the dog instinctively sensed the weight of the moment. The smile creeping onto the woman's face starred this continued possibility. Jack felt a rush of hope, but also a sliver of fear. What would this unexplored partnership demand from them? Would he and Rex truly navigate back to a place of purpose? Or were they merely at the beginning of an even more profound struggle? With unresolved questions swirling in his mind, Jack prepared himself for the clash of expectations ahead at the forefront of their shared journey, where true challenges lay just out of sight. The sun had barely risen when Jack found himself sitting across from his laptop, exploring the organization's website deeper than he had ever dared before. The previous day's meeting had lit a fire within him, nudging him toward uncharted territories. His thoughts flashed with the potential of harnessing his experience, yet an undercurrent of uncertainty tugged at him. Could he truly convey the profound need for authentic relationships while navigating the organization's data-driven culture? Rex shifted at his feet, snoring softly, a serene reminder that he was not alone in this daunting task. Jack reached down and scratched behind the dog's ears, feeling comforted by the familiar warmth. With every stroke, he breathed life into his aspirations, allowing the rhythmic motion to ground his racing thoughts. He began outlining ideas, stories that encapsulated the essence of struggle, joy, and redemption. Maybe, just maybe, the organization's metrics could coexist with narratives that spoke from the heart. What if they infused measurable outcomes with authentic tales? As he typed, concepts flowed freely, melding clinical effectiveness with human connection. Words about Rex's training and their journey of healing became interspersed with the tangible benefits of emotional bonds. Yet as he crafted his manifesto, doubt seeped in like an unwelcome guest. Would they dismiss his ideas as fluff? Had he overstepped by daring to entwine emotion with data? Flashbacks of rejection echoed in his mind, a kaleidoscope of past failures that threatened to unravel his newfound resolve. Jack clenched his jaw, pushing the fear aside. What he had to offer mattered. It was a matter of reframing their conversation. Later that day, he set out to a nearby park, an unwitting sanctuary where nature thrived unapologetically. Jack breathed deeply, allowing the mixture of fresh air and rustling leaves to become meditative. The vibrant world around him served as a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the organization. His eyes caught sight of a veteran sitting alone on a bench, a tattered cap pulled low, his dog lounging beside him. Jack felt a stirring in his soul, an instinct nudging him. He approached, heart pounding. "Hey there," he greeted, attempting to initiate conversation. The man looked up, surprise crossing his weathered face. "I'm Jack, and this is Rex," he said, gesturing toward his loyal companion. "I see you're a fellow veteran." A bond blossomed in their brief exchange. They shared stories of combat, camaraderie, and the silent battles fought long after returning home. Together they spoke about the unique healing power of their dogs, the unconditional love that reminded them of the importance of trust. Jack felt a thrill of connection ignite. This was precisely the symbiotic relationship he sought to advocate. After the conversation wound to a close, he offered the man his contact information, ensuring they could continue sharing insights. This was a moment where vulnerability bridged the gap between two souls, becoming something infinitely larger than mere statistics. He leapt from the park into the world they had created, returning with purpose solidified in his heart. As he sat back down at his laptop later that night, his mind raced with revelations. The previously daunting company was now an opportunity to champion real change. But even in his fervor, uncertainty crept in. Would the organization's leadership see the potential lurking beneath the surface of his vision? Would they heed the stories and face the challenge of redefining metrics in a world that was constantly changing? Jack took a deep breath and prepared an email, outlining his ideas while highlighting the embodiment of experiences witnessed in the park. He hit send, releasing the flood of hope that accompanied his dreams into the digital ether, leaving him with a sense of anticipation thick in the air. He knew something significant had begun, yet the shadows of doubt remained. Standing at a new crossroads, Jack pondered whether the organization would understand the depth of their work, or whether they would allow the bright potential of connection to slip away once again. What awaited him next would test whether he could not only influence a culture, but also break free from his own past, once and for all. The morning light crept through Jack's window, pulling him from dreams laced with inspiration but marred by shadows of self-doubt. He lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with the prospects of his recent email. What if they disregarded his well-crafted vision? As he rose to meet the day, the lingering uncertainty transformed into a resolve. Today would mark the start of figuring out how to solidify his ideas further. Rex was already at the door, tail wagging exuberantly, as if sensing his owner's unsteady determination. When Jack took him for a morning walk, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that every step echoed a silent protest against mediocrity. The park wasn't just a refuge anymore. It had transformed into a vibrant canvas of possibilities. Jack recalled the conversation with the veteran, the shared stories, the laughter, how they connected on an emotional level that transcended statistics and data. There was power in those exchanges, an understanding of each other's battles that could ignite change within the organization. Walking felt different today. Each footfall resonated with the rhythm of purpose. Back at home, Jack prepared to research others in the organization who had made memorable impacts through narrative, seeking examples of how stories could reshape company culture. He typed keywords into the search bar: storytelling and organizational development. As articles filled the screen, he absorbed theories and case studies, feeling inspired by innovators who dared to dissolve traditional boundaries. But every new revelation came with the weight of his own hesitation. Could he source enough evidence to persuade a data-driven board? Jack's heart rate quickened. This was more than just professional development. It was personal. He had fought hard to not just survive but to thrive, and now the stakes felt even higher. The looming apprehension threatened to suffocate his ambition, but he breathed through it. Suddenly, a thought pierced through. What if he conducted a workshop? A gathering where he could invite his colleagues to explore these narratives themselves, drawing from their experiences to create a shared understanding of their mission. The prospect electrified him. An idea. He could create an environment where authenticity reigned, where colleagues could feel free to blend their stories with the organization's goals. Jack began drafting a proposal. The workshop would not only highlight the importance of emotional connections, but also encourage employees to share their own experiences, crafted into narratives that could be woven through the fabric of their strategy. He envisioned it as a tapestry where each thread represented a unique voice, collectively illustrating the vision of a truly impactful organization. As he typed furiously, excitement intertwined with self-doubt. Would they engage in the process? Would they truly see the value of such vulnerability in the workplace? He pushed the questions aside, reminding himself that transformative change had to start somewhere. Later that day, Jack met with a trusted coworker, Amy, who had a reputation for being open-minded and supportive. He shared his vision, his newfound idea for a workshop filled with heartfelt storytelling and collaboration. Her eyes lit up in understanding, but the skepticism he feared crept back in as she asked, "But how do we measure success? Isn't that what our leadership expects?" Jack felt a pang. Her words mirrored his own insecurities. "What if success isn't just numbers?" he replied, though uncertainty dripped from his voice. "What if it's about connection? Real connection. Isn't that a part of what we aim to achieve?" Her thoughtful silence pressed heavily in the air around them. He realized then, as he looked into her eyes, that his struggle lay not only within the organization, but also within himself. He must advocate for his vision while wrestling with the conflicting values of approaching emotional narratives at a metrics-driven organization. By the end of the conversation, Amy agreed to help him refine the proposal. They would need to dig into practical applications and ways to blend their goals with measurable outcomes, creating a bridge between data and humanity. Jack felt a surge of hope and renewed determination. Yet, with every step forward came the fear that their efforts might still fall short. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow into his room, Jack reflected on the evening's discussions. This journey was no longer solely about redefining culture. It covered mapping the terrain of his own ambitions. Could he wrestle with the duality of conviction and fear? Embarking on a mission to infuse heart into an organization entrenched in numbers was no small feat. Would his new path culminate in success, or would it lead to further heartbreak? The air was electric with possibility, yet laden with doubt as he contemplated the challenges looming ahead. But one nagging question lingered in the back of his mind. Just how far was he willing to push in order to advocate for a new reality? Jack sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, a white page blinking back at him like an empty canvas awaiting color. The workshop proposal had started to take shape, but still needed a foundation. He rubbed his temples, efforting to dispel the gnawing sensation of inadequacy that loomed over him. In an organization driven by results, could an effort rooted in human storytelling ever truly resonate? A deep inhale steadied his racing heart. What if he anchored the workshop not just in the qualitative aspects of storytelling, but in the potent intersection of data and narrative? He grabbed a notepad and began jotting down points. He envisioned case studies that demonstrated how engagement could improve productivity or client relations through emotional investment. Metrics were the language of the board. They could not be ignored. Just then, Amy's voice broke through his thoughts as she knocked lightly and entered his office, breaking his focus but igniting a new flame of encouragement. "Have you had any breakthrough?" she asked, her tone veering from supportive to inquisitive. "Sort of," Jack admitted, hesitating for a moment before sharing his latest thoughts. "What if we tie narratives to measurable outcomes, like showing how storytellers in the company improve teamwork and innovation? I can pull data to create a narrative arc of success." Amy's brow furrowed slightly, a sign of cautious intrigue. "That could work. You can create a story of change through numbers. But remember, you'll need strong examples. It can't just be theoretical." Jack nodded, feeling the idea solidifying amid his swirling emotions. He recognized that stepping into this new challenge wasn't merely about crafting a workshop. It was also about confronting his own fears of inadequacy and the perception that he might be overstepping by that which he couldn't fully control. He felt a rush of motivation surge through him. "Let's gather stories from colleagues," he proposed. "We can find 2 or 3 people who've had significant emotional experiences at work and present them alongside data. It's a bold synthesis of qualitative and quantitative insights." "Fantastic," Amy affirmed. "Real stories combined with relevant data can illustrate the impact of emotional connections in a way that resonates." As they brainstormed further, Jack's worries began to fade slightly. He was alighting on an approach that represented a marriage between his authenticity and the expectations of his workplace. This workshop was different. It was not just a hope or an abstract concept, but a tangible bridge he could build. However, a new dread crept in, threatening to overshadow his excitement. Confronting the leadership with new, perhaps unconventional ideas on the importance of storytelling in their processes felt like a risky gamble. What if they rejected it outright because it failed to align with their traditional metrics? As he paced his office, he ultimately crafted a plan, not only to execute the workshop, but also to engage directly with the senior management team. For real change, leadership buy-in was necessary. He'd have to prepare a presentation that articulated not just the workshop's value, but the long-term benefits of connecting emotionally with colleagues, clients, and the data that supported these narratives. The day slipped away, each hour spiraling with thoughts of how to approach management. Conversations began to shift in his mind. What could he say to persuade them? By the evening, with the sun casting long shadows over his desk, a plan began to form. Perhaps it was time he spoke to the head of the department directly. Support from an influential ally could provide the validation he craved and enable him to push through the doubts that clouded his resolve. Feeling a sense of urgency, Jack picked up the phone to schedule a meeting, heart pounding in his chest. He was about to step into uncharted waters, reaffirming not just his professional intentions, but also cementing his commitment to personal growth. This was more than a presentation. It was a moment that could very well reshape the course of his journey. But as he dialed, a final thought flickered through his mind. Was he ready for the potential backlash? Would he truly be able to defend his vision against skepticism in the face of tradition? The moment of reckoning was approaching, and he was questioning if he was strong enough to navigate it. The phone rang twice before a voice broke through the static, somewhat transactional. "This is Megan from Human Resources. How may I help you?" Jack's heart pounded in his ears. "Hi, Megan. It's Jack from the marketing team. I'd like to schedule a meeting with Mr. Edwards, if possible. Let me check his availability." There was a pause, during which Jack could almost hear the hum of the office around her. "He is free tomorrow at 10. Does that work for you?" "Yes, that works perfectly," Jack replied, the iron grip of nerves now relaxing a bit. After hanging up, he sat back in his chair, feeling a blend of excitement and anxiety. A day away from confrontation, but it was a tangible leap toward his goal. Jack was determined to prepare meticulously for this meeting. He drafted bullet points that summarized the benefits of storytelling through data. The objective was to weave together the emotional gravity of human trials with quantifiable success, illustrating that to enhance productivity, the emotional aspect of work could not be overlooked. With every point, he reaffirmed the validity of his approach, transforming vague worries into solid arguments. As night cloaked the city outside, Jack delved into compiling anecdotes from colleagues. He reached out via email, requesting significant successes that stemmed from storytelling or emotional connection in their professional experiences. Each response painted a rich tapestry of hope and resilience, reaffirming the power of authentic communication. The next morning, he reviewed his notes again, weaving the case studies into his narrative. The plan took shape. He would lead with the stories, allow the emotional weight to settle before presenting the supporting data. Jack envisioned holding the room's attention, feeling their skepticism melting as he made his case for connecting stories with metrics. Yet the closer he got to his scheduled meeting, the more doubt crept in. Would he be perceived as naive? Was he truly prepared to defend what others might dismiss as a soft approach? Jack's internal narrative began to spiral. He took a deep, steadying breath, rationalizing that the insights gleaned were valid. The success of large-scale initiatives often hinged on human connection. It was time to translate that into a language his management understood. As he walked towards the conference room, self-doubt brewed in his mind, undermining his momentum. He spotted familiar faces from leadership gathering, their expressions unreadable. If he slipped up, doubts might consume him. But if he maintained composure, he could foster a real dialogue. Perhaps it was not just the statistics he had to battle against, but the implicit skepticism of traditional norms holding his workplace captive. "I'm ready," he murmured under his breath as he adjusted his collar. He took a seat at the table, heart racing as Mr. Edwards entered, offering a cautious smile. "Good morning, Jack. You're here to discuss something innovative?" Jack's throat tightened as he faced a room filled with seasoned executives. "Yes. I believe storytelling can influence our projects positively, and I have some compelling insights to share." He started to speak, but doubts danced within him precisely when he needed focus. The moment of truth was upon him. Would he break through the barriers of conventional thought, or would he be rebuffed, his fears confirmed? The stakes felt perilously high as he prepared to lay bare his vision. Every sentence an opportunity to rise above the initial paralysis he felt. The silence hung heavy around him, tethering him to the path of his own making. Each word would be a test of his resolve. In that glimmer of uncertainty, one question loomed larger than the others. Could he challenge the status quo effectively and emerge stronger? But the silence was palpable, and as he inhaled sharply, he realized he was not merely advocating for a workshop. He was asserting his right to present his vision, his path to growth. Now it was time to confront the expectations placed upon him and navigate through the skepticism. As he began to speak with measured determination, doubts lurked in the corners of his mind, waiting for their moment to strike. He pushed forward, knowing the real challenge was not the skepticism he faced, but the realization that success could only occur outside his comfort zone. Elation coursed through Jack as he spoke, each word emboldening him to confront the unease that swirled within. He began by sharing a powerful success story, recounting how a missing child was found after a heartfelt appeal connected emotionally with the community. The room listened, and for a fleeting moment he sensed a shift. Curiosity sparked in their eyes, some furtive nods of recognition. But as he transitioned into data, the skepticism reappeared, echoing in the silence that followed. Jack sensed the weight of their doubts pressing against his chest. He had prepared for resistance but felt unmoored when it materialized. One of the executives, a stoic figure with years in the industry, leaned forward. "Jack, aren't you concerned that relying on emotion could dilute our brand's message?" The question sliced through him, blunt and direct. He had expected skepticism, but somehow it felt more personal, like a direct challenge to his identity as a marketer. "I believe emotional connections enhance our brand's resilience and relatability," he replied, forcing conviction into his voice even as he questioned himself internally. Mr. Edwards nodded, visibly contemplating, and yet Jack saw the skepticism shimmering in the eyes of other leaders. He pressed on, emphasizing how stories resonated across demographics, igniting passion in the workforce and the consumer base. "When people feel something, they are compelled to act. Isn't that what we want as a brand?" Doubt hung in the air, a stubborn fog that refused to lift. Jack's heart raced faster, his palms beginning to sweat. Perhaps he did not possess the clout or the experience. Perhaps this attempt would be just another failed endeavor to shake the foundations of entrenched thinking. Internally, he grappled with an overwhelming realization. He was not just promoting a new strategy, but advocating for a fundamental transformation in the approach to marketing and communication within the company. A shift that required maturity, not merely in thought but in acceptance of varying human experiences. For the first time, he understood he wasn't just defending storytelling as a tool. He was promoting empathy, the need for authenticity within the corporate structure. He took a measured breath, allowing the silence to draw his thoughts together. "Let me show you," he said, tapping into his research and case studies. As he scrolled through visuals of successful campaigns powered by emotion, he could feel the room's pulse alter. Questions briefly gave way to intrigue. Jack took notice. It wasn't all on him to sway their perception, but to create a collaborative dialogue that could cultivate curiosity. Perhaps the focus should not solely be on the numbers, but on the narrative behind them. What led to those statistics? What were the choices made? He saw a flicker of understanding on a few faces, a glimmer of possibility sparked by his assertion. He noted the shift within him, a quiet triumph of clarity emerging from the chaos of persuasion. He had prepared this moment meticulously, but it was the realization of his genuine belief in the transformative power of storytelling that fueled his performance. As the meeting reached its conclusion, Jack felt a deep satisfaction enveloping him. Though the path ahead remained fraught with uncertainty, there was no doubting his inner growth. He had navigated the complexities of skepticism, not just with argument, but with personal conviction. Walking out of the conference room, he realized he had crossed a threshold. His ability to stand firm in his beliefs amidst doubt, marked not only a personal victory, but an important professional evolution. This meeting was more than a challenge. It was a transformative moment in his career, one that ignited a new sense of purpose. But as he returned to his desk, looking ahead, another flicker of doubt emerged. What if his ideas alone were not enough to spark the shift he envisioned? What if he needed allies or deeper insights to sustain this momentum? With an inkling of urgency, Jack resolved to seek out those who supported change, those who harbored visions similar to his. He needed momentum outside of his own, a coalition to strengthen the case for his approach. Determined to dive deeper, he began listing potential allies within the company, who shared his passion for bridging emotion with strategy. The next step loomed before him as he scribbled names and ideas, realizing that true professional evolution often lies in collaboration. And in this moment, the question echoed in his mind. What alliances might he forge that could propel both him and his revolutionary vision forward? Jack's pulse quickened with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. The prospect of reaching out to potential allies was both exhilarating and daunting. He knew this wouldn't be a simple task. He had to tread carefully, understanding that each connection could either fortify his position or further isolate him. Settling onto a nearby bench, he reviewed his notes. Among the names he had jotted down, Janet from the creative team stood out. He had observed her during meetings, her keen insights piercing through corporate jargon and challenging the status quo. She had passion, and that was something they could leverage together. Jack decided to invite her for coffee, a casual setting to broach the topic of change without the pressures of the boardroom looming overhead. As he sent her an invitation, Jack felt a wave of unease wash over him. What if she dismissed his ideas outright? What if he couldn't articulate his vision clearly? The moment she agreed, Jack felt a surge of hope. They met at a small cafe just a block from the office, where the aroma of roasted coffee beans hung in the air like an unspoken promise. He found her already seated at their designated table, glancing through a sketchbook. "Thanks for meeting me," he started, attempting to modulate his nerves. "Of course. I was curious to see what you have in mind," she replied warmly, her eyes lighting up with genuine interest. As they both settled in, Jack launched into his pitch, emphasizing the emotional approach to their marketing strategy. He laid out the success stories he had gathered and the evidence backing his assertions. However, he soon found himself unraveling in the weave of his narrative. Janet listened intently, her expression shifting as he unfolded his thoughts. "I see where you're going," she interjected, "but I wonder how we can bridge the space between lofty emotional ideals and the hard numbers the executives are fixated on. There's a gap we need to navigate." The challenge in her voice stung, but Jack welcomed the tension. He appreciated her candidness, realizing that this was the type of dialogue necessary for growth. What if we frame data within the stories themselves? We can illustrate the impact rather than just presenting it as cold, hard metrics. People remember stories. Numbers fade. A contemplative silence settled between them as Jack's words lingered in the air. He began to see a reflection of his vision in her nodding agreement. Slowly, a blueprint unfurled in his mind, sketching a potential direction they could chart together. As they delved deeper into discussions, brainstorming how they might approach their colleagues with a united front, he felt a growing sense of resolve. The initial doubts he harbored began to fade, replaced with a determination to cultivate this newfound partnership. Just as they reached a momentum, Janet glanced toward the street, a thoughtful expression overtaking her features. "You know, I believe our strongest asset isn't just storytelling, but how we engage our audience in that experience. People crave authenticity. Maybe we need to focus our message on building trust through empathy." Jack felt a spark ignite within him as he realized the importance of their alliance. It wasn't just about creating campaigns. It was about reshaping the very ethos of their brand. He could envision the tangible impact they could create together. As they exchanged ideas, the discussion fueled his ambition, illuminating the path ahead. Yet, lurking in the back of his mind was the nagging thought. Would the higher-ups embrace this alliance and the changes they wished to pursue? The moment of truth loomed, tantalizing and fear-inducing. Jack's thoughts spiraled as he considered presenting a unified front to the executives. The vision appeared clearer, but daunting. What if their ideas were met with the same skepticism he faced earlier today? He drew in a deep breath, feeling the weight of his aspirations and their significance. They were on the verge of something pivotal, teetering between possibility and reality, and therein lay the precipice of action. How far was he willing to push this idea now that he had laid the groundwork for a partnership? Would he nurture this nascent alliance, or retreat into the safety of solitary endeavors? Jack, energized yet overwhelmed, made a decisive choice. "Let's draft a proposal, Janet." Together. But as she nodded, excitement building on both sides, he pondered. What risks would he face to stand firm for this transformation, both for himself and for the future of the brand? Days turned into weeks as Jack and Janet collaborated, their connection deepening with each brainstorming session. They worked tirelessly, blending heartfelt narratives with compelling data, illustrating the tangible impact of emotional engagement within company initiatives. Each meeting became an exploration of passion. Jack's courage to advocate for a new way of thinking was met with Janet's unyielding creativity. They were no longer just colleagues, they were co-champions of change, daring to reshape the organization's approach. As they composed their proposal, Jack felt a newfound sense of purpose. The workshop they envisioned was more than just a meeting. It was a transformative experience designed to ignite empathy within their colleagues and foster an understanding that the heart of their mission lay in authentic connections. They presented success stories from various departments, intermingled with heartfelt accounts of struggles and triumphs, coupled with metrics showcasing enhanced productivity and team morale. The day of the final presentation arrived, and nerves pulsed through Jack's veins as he stood before the leadership team with Janet by his side. He felt the familiar weight of doubt creeping in, but amidst it all, resonating clarity and resolve countered every whisper of insecurity. This initiative wasn't merely for recognition. It was a testament to the resilience they both embodied. He began by sharing his personal journey, the solitude of returning home, the emotional echoes of military service, and the deep connection forged with Rex. His story built the framework for understanding. Each sentence flowed with conviction, painting a vivid picture of vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness. As he spoke, he felt the tentative power of connection anchor him, a reminder that his voice mattered, just as Rex's bond had. "I believe," Jack asserted, "that when we share our vulnerabilities we not only grow individually, but we also cultivate a culture of trust and resilience within this organization. Empathy is not a soft skill, it's a cornerstone of effective teamwork and innovation." When Janet joined him on stage, her words struck chords deeper than metrics alone could reach. She highlighted how such narratives consistently led to better engagement across teams, drawing from case studies they had meticulously compiled. The room hummed with collective curiosity as their presentation unfolded, each narrative interspersed with quantifiable outcomes. Jack could see subtle shifts in expressions, moments of recognition blooming on their audience's faces, a silent acknowledgement of the power in bridging emotion with measurable success. When they concluded, a tangible silence blanketed the room before inquiries sparked. Executives leaned forward, curiosity now evident as they engaged with Jack and Janet's vision. The dialogue flowed, an invigorating exchange shedding light on broader implications, potential applications, and how measurements of success could evolve with emotional intelligence at the core. As they wrapped up, Jack felt a spark of hope ignite. Even in skepticism there was collaboration, an openness to embracing new perspectives. The air in the conference room shifted. It felt lighter, infused with the possibility of change. Later, when Mr. Edwards addressed them with a nod of respect, that inertia solidified into soaring pride. "You've offered a fresh narrative onto our mission. A workshop sounds promising. Let's explore this further." Jack and Janet exchanged glances as exhilaration surged through them. While they had approached this journey with uncertainty, they now recognized the profound significance of their collaborative efforts. Their passion had resonated, shifting attitudes and opening hearts to new perspectives. They were not just chipping away at walls of tradition, they were erecting bridges toward a more humane workplace. In the days that followed, Jack's life began to unfurl in rich shades once more. His relationship with Rex deepened, each walk a celebration of shared victory. No longer burdened by isolation, Jack felt a profound connection to his purpose, one that extended beyond professional ambition to personal fulfillment. He had conquered the self-doubt that haunted him for so long, realizing that vulnerability was not a sign of weakness, but rather a catalyst for growth. Within the organization, a new sense of camaraderie blossomed as the workshop unfolded, elevating connections that spanned department lines. Jack and Janet's vision of storytelling began transforming the workplace, enriching the fabric surrounding their brand while embodying the authenticity they had strived to cultivate. Recognition poured in, not just for the workshop's success, but for how it redefined the very ethos of their organization, merging metrics with humanity. Jack, once a soldier navigating the storms of isolation, had proven that he could reclaim his narrative, all through the bond he shared with Rex and the unwavering determination to advocate for deep connections. He was not just thriving, he was soaring, rooted in solid confidence and recognized competence. The struggle had evolved into strength, emerging as a beacon of hope, not only for himself, but for every voice seeking connection in a world that often prioritized data over heart. In this transformative journey, Jack had not only found fulfillment for himself, he had established a legacy of change that would resonate long beyond his days in the organization. The heartfelt narratives were now part of the company's framework, ensuring that they would continue to empower others who wore experiences like armor, breaking boundaries together. As he walked alongside Rex, now more than just a companion but a symbol of triumph, Jack knew the journey was far from over. This was merely the beginning, yet his heart swelled with the knowledge that he had faced his battles and emerged victorious. Now was the moment to reach out, nurturing those around him with the light of possibility. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Every click matters. Comment your reactions and theories about this inspiring conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful journey of transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to make a difference.